Thank you, Brad. I love this campus. Every time I come, I get lost, though. I had to call Brad to have him help me get parked. So I'm a dinosaur. Mimi is not. She's a queen. I love her to pieces. We're going to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary in, what, 2 or 3 years? So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you students. And I just have to say that you are the future of this country. And I hope that somebody as old as me, who has been through as much as I've been through, can ferret out a few really good things to give you in the way of advice. Now keep in mind, I grew up and didn't have a TV in my home until I was 15. There was no such thing as a calculator. I didn't use an abacus, but in fact, my first calculator cost $400 and it did nothing but add and subtract and divide. No computers, no internet, no texting. And so when I was retired at age 43, living in Hawaii, I decided to take my expertise and give Polynesian Cultural Center a little help. Ralph Rogers had been a mission president, and I knew him from Samoa because that's where I served a mission. So he put me to work at PCC in charge of the Honolulu office. So I drove in every day and sat in a nice office there near the beach. And one day, one of the VPs of PCC, younger guy, said, "George, something about IT." And then another sentence, something about HR. And I said, what do those stand for? Now you're talking to a guy that'd been through 50 entities that I started and failed at most in my career, and I'm retired at 43, and I've never heard of HR and IT. We called it the computer guy when we finally did get a computer, and HR was the person that did the hiring and firing and so forth. So I'm here to just tell you how it was back in the olden days and give you a few tips if I can. Thanks, Brad, for inviting us. It's an honor to be here. And I understand you're almost all upperclassmen and women in business. How many of you want to go straight into some entrepreneurial efforts? Raise the hands. So you were right, Mr. Seeley, about 10%. And the rest of you want to go work for some big company, maybe, or a small company, but in your field of business. Are there many here who are not involved in business, just here because you heard George Murdock was going to speak? Oh, my granddaughter. Thank you. Well, I took a class, about 15 credits worth of psychology at BYU, and I loved psychology, and one of my favorite classes was the psychology of deviant behavior. We even got to go spend a lot of time in the prison at Point of the Mountain. But I understand now why I was able to raise 8 sons after having had that class. Psychology of deviant behavior. We did have one daughter, and I think the only thing I can say about her is that she was never deviant and she never had any problems. I think she probably said when in school and was asked, "What does your dad do for a living?" she would say something like, "I don't really know, but he always carries a big ring of keys, so maybe he's a janitor." Because I had so many things going on in my life. We started in our business career, I should say I started in my business career with a little wagon filled with cantaloupes in Phoenix, Arizona, walking down Cambridge Avenue, selling cantaloupes and a few other fruits and vegetables out of my little wagon. My dad would bring them home in a pickup and put them in the wagon and let me go. My sister went with me sometimes. And I liked it, and I thought I was pretty good at it. It was pretty easy to do. That was my first entrepreneurial enterprise, and I was 5 years old. Then at age 8, we had moved from northern Phoenix to southern Phoenix, and I started selling subscriptions to the South Phoenix Roundup at $1 per subscription, which was my commission. And I had a little box with a lock on it, and I would keep my little stacks of ones in there, because that was what I got to take home after I had made my sale. So I didn't know it, but I was a budding entrepreneur. I had the DNA, the blood in my veins, because my dad was an entrepreneur, and I could spend many classes telling you of his many entrepreneurial efforts and failures, of which there were quite a few as well. But you don't consider it a failure. If you're really honest about it, it's just a stepping stone. Well, that didn't work. It's like Edison, and how many? Was it 1,000 or 1,500 different elements he tried to get the filament to the light bulb? And none of them were failures. They just canceled that idea for future use until he finally got to the tungsten or whatever else he came up with. So each failure was a stepping stone, so you don't call them failures. I've never had stocks in anything unless our 401k had some. I think it might have. I've never done an IPO, initial public offering. And so I think I can proudly say today I still don't own it. Do we own any stocks, honey? I've always owned stock, but it's been in my own companies. And so I'm an entrepreneurial. I'm a starter. I'm not a very good finisher, and my wife will tell you that. That's why she has so much paperwork to take care of, is the unfinished things that George left because he's off on a new venture. But we do have about 22 LLCs, and I thank my wife for keeping on top of them. Just the renewals, it keeps a person very busy. So how did I get started in this business? I started out I was in law school at UVU after I graduated from BYU, and I started out with the idea that my dad was probably losing it when he visited me, telling me that my mom had cancer, and that he had come up with this wonderful ancient Indian herbal remedy that could help cleanse her liver or something of that nature, and that she was taking it, and hopefully it was going to give her some additional years on her life. And I thought he was absolutely crazy. That was his idea. He started Nature's Way Products Incorporated. That was what he called it. He came up with the name. And he had that idea, and he was telling me about it, and I probably told my wife, there's no way I'm going to get involved in that. We ran out of money. I didn't finish law school, one of my regrets. So write this one down. Finish what you start, ladies and gentlemen, students, or as you're going to hear later, guys. That's what they call us when I go to order at a restaurant. I never tip if they call my wife a guy. I'm pretty sure she's not a guy. But we're going to talk about language in a minute. But so he tells me this. We leave law school. I go to work for Mimi's dad. I am going to be the big VP of sales for Miller's Honey Company. This is the mother company, sells internationally. It's still pretty small, even though it's 80 or 90 years old by then. So that means I drive trucks with bees on them to all the northwestern states, taking bees and moving bees, because her grandfather was the father of migratory beekeeping. Nobody had ever thought until he got from Utah, where it's snowing and he's feeding the bees in the winter, and he's in Southern California, and they're making honey, a second crop. How novel is that? So he started hauling bees down there. He started migratory beekeeping. Now everybody does it. You'll see bees on the road everywhere. So I had to haul bees, and I ran the wax rendering plant. I took all the foundations from the beekeepers and turned it into nice white wax that we could sell to Knorr Candle Company and others to make the candles with. And I occasionally got into some sales. A year later, I get a call from Dad and my brother Ken. Ken had just lost by a very small margin election, I think, for student body president of BYU. He was majoring in economics, maybe a junior. He lost the election. Dad calls and says, I caught my hand in a milling machine and I'm really injured badly. I need some help. Ken takes off, goes and helps him down in Phoenix from BYU. Then while they're there, they find out that they think they need somebody that had a little more education, or who knows. Let's get George involved. So they called me, and I told my father-in-law that I had this offer. I was going to get 1/3 of the company, which was worth zero, that couldn't guarantee a paycheck, and I would be the president. And I'm going to go do this, and it's in the health food industry, natural foods. And he said, George, this is a fad. It's going to come and go. You have a future here. Stay here. It's sound. It's solid. The home we were in was included in my salary. And I took off. It struck that entrepreneurial nerve that I have and desire. And I left Miller's Honey in Colton and went to, we lived in Mesa, Arizona. Phoenix, there was a little place that the LDS Church had as a cannery and turned it into a seminary building for seminary lessons. And somehow my dad rented it. And because my brother had no credit, he had good credit. He had nothing bad against him, where my dad had had a failure or two. So Ken managed to get the building purchased, and they owed $10,000 for it. And Nature's Way was humming inside there with a few accounts and a few sales. and nobody got to cash their paychecks. But I got there and I was excited, and Mimi made the sandwiches, and we got family involved, and we grew Nature's Way. A year later, turning point, and who would have known, but the upstairs, that this was not going to be the end-all and the be-all of my career, even though it had all of the ramifications of being a fabulous success. Would you believe it if I told you that within 60 days of having this company started, worked in California with it for a while, and then moved it to Utah, that I was on the front page of Wall Street Journal, I was in Time, Life, Newsweek, Esquire, Forbes, and an article that my wife threw away in Playboy about being in a counter-cyclical business. If anyone is here, maybe one or two that were around in the 70s, the early 70s, that's where you parked for miles to get gas. The economy was in a shambles. Everybody was buying wood-burning stoves and food storage. So I was called on to talk in church. As you know, these Mormons, they like to have people from the congregation talk in church. My assignment was what our leaders had been telling us to do: food storage, family preparedness. Boy, I didn't know much. But my mom had a huge food storage. She'd always believed in it. She followed her leaders' advice. We had none. But I talked about it. I researched it well. And in that talk, I told them some of the prophecies from leaders in the past and so forth. A bushel of wheat would be worth a bushel of gold, those kind of things. And I couldn't get out of there till 9 or 10 that night after church. I was in the area where they play basketball in the cultural hall. And everybody wanted to know, where do I get it? How much does it cost? How much should I get? And so by Monday, I was on the phone to San Francisco ordering a semi-load of Bright Stock dehydrated foods. And the truck crashed on the way down. The driver was killed. Sad thing. Ordered another load, and it came, and we made the labels, and we called it Rainy Day Foods. And the logo was an umbrella with over the top, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. That was my slogan. So now Nature's Way has a diversification, and George is in charge of that, and off he goes to California, borrows a warehouse from Mimi's dad, gets Rainy Day going, and I have salesmen and vice presidents all over the country and in foreign countries, and I'm selling in a few months millions a month of dehydrated foods. We're packing it ourselves. We developed some nitrogen enclaves. I can't remember the word, but it's a big unit that pulls a vacuum to take all the air out of the crimped lids on the cans, puts nitrogen back in to give it a 20-year shelf life. So I move everything, 19 semi-loads, to Utah. I buy a couple of buildings, start Nature's Way, 100 employees, 200 employees, 2 hours, 2 shifts, 3 shifts a week, or a day, 6 days a week. It's going crazy. It's making big bucks, and it's booming. The economy's still bad, and I'm getting famous, and I'm getting pretty cocky. And so I think I'm a really good businessman, and I'm a great entrepreneur. But lessons to be learned. Where does Rainy Day go? Pretty soon, as the economy changed, Rainy Day Foods started to lose sales. We had all these employees, all this equipment. By now we had 4 warehouses of 10,000 square foot each. Nature's Way had moved up, put in a corner of warehouse 4, 20,000, 30,000 a month, and we're doing millions. So what do? And we struggled hard with it, but we turned that negative into an asset. And we sold everything. Every professor at BYU had a 5-year supply of food storage. I think we donated a bunch of our equipment to the LDS Church for tithing, and we turned every penny we could get to beg, borrow, or steal, so to speak, about $1 million into the building of Nature's Way, because while I was working Rainy Day, Nature's Way and the industry, the natural foods industry, was starting to take off. We're in Utah. I don't know if you've counted out there, but there are, dozens of natural foods companies in Utah. We didn't start it. I'm not saying we're the first, but Nature's Way was one of the biggest. We had some breakthrough things happen, and Nature's Way just took off and went to the top of the charts, where we were doing conventions with a little hand-drawn signs sitting on a chair to prop up to say, come and buy our herbs. We now were spending $300,000 for a trade show for 3 days. And we had the center section, and Nature's Way was booming. And I started Young Presidents Organization in the state of Utah. I even started the chapter in Southern California, in the Inland Empire chapter. Young Presidents Organization, a very prestigious international organization for big, cocky, expensive, Rolex-wearing presidents. And I thought that was really important because I knew Spence Eccles and I knew all the bigwigs, John Price, who started all the local shopping centers in town, and he was in our chapter. And I had airplanes and the biggest houseboat at Lake Powell, and I'll tell you a story later about my Rolex. And anyway, so we were on top of the world, and Nature's Way was booming. And then my brother came to me one day and said, George, I'd like to own everything. I'd like to buy you out. I was training for the Ironman, singing in the Tabernacle Choir, high councilman. I was doing everything but work. And Ken was in charge of production. I was in charge of sales, finance, and I was president. We had numerous entities. I can't remember how many, but Health Products International and Nutrition Professionals and Murdock International and Murdock Investments, all these different things, doing real estate, different other entities. So I decided with my wife to sell to Ken. I sold him my 50%. Ken quickly sold 25% to Madausen Schwabe out of Germany, and he did some marvelous things, and he should be here speaking about what he did and how he grew the company and how he became much more wealthy than George ever became. But I had my freedom, and I was an entrepreneur, and I got excited about running to Southern California, living in Lake Arrowhead, having a ranch in Lake Arrowhead with a landing strip, 80 horses, 40 boarded, 40 mine. I was living big. And I went down the hill every day from Lake Arrowhead, where we were living, ran Miller's Honey, and decided one day, been there and done that. Like I said, I'm an entrepreneur. We grew it, but I hired the best guy I could find, a Nature's Way guy in the finance department named Steve Smith. Came to work for me because he wanted to get out of Nature's Way and come down there because his folks live nearby, out in the desert, somewhere in Hesperia. So Colton San Bernardino, we started a new plant for Miller's Honey, got another company, picked up 2 or 3 companies, detritus. When they went under, one was a major manufacturer. They went under. We started packing for them until they couldn't pay, and then we took over all their accounts. Nearly doubled our business. We took over a co-op that was fledgling and having problems. Now all of those people were selling us their honey, and we were selling where they were selling before. Their key guy comes and becomes our sales manager for a time till he died a few years later. But I decided, I'm 43, I like Hawaii, I like all those Polynesians, North Shore. I went over and I bought a home on the beach with some income property there, some vacation rentals. And then I told Mimi about it. So I didn't tell you yet, but I was a chauvinist, and I'm no longer a chauvinist. For those of you that don't know what a chauvinist is, because you didn't have a chauvinist dad like I did, my dad made all the decisions. He ran the show, and so I did. But my wife finally decided she's my full partner. So those of you who are going to be entrepreneurs, I'm talking to 10% of you, if you have a spouse and her name's on the line with you at the bank, and she's part owner because she is your wife or he is your husband, then they are full partners in everything. But if you're working for IBM as an executive, your wife knows nothing. Remember that. There's a delineation there, so I can't give you advice. You can be all the chauvinist you want to be as far as IBM is concerned, but when you get home, be a dad and be a good husband. Well, I have a lot of notes here that I could go through and tell you about, but we sold Nature's Way in 2010 to a very big company. And if you want to see all the nasty stuff that happened as a result of that, the good stuff was we were able to take a ton of money from the sale of it. We sold it for cash and pay off everything that we had been buying on time. Now, the foundation of many great empires is real estate. The railroad people made a lot of money hauling stuff, but they made most of their money, I believe. You're the business professor, but I think they made most of their money in real estate. Same goes with the Carnegies and the Rockefellers. Real estate was very, very big for them. And I had always loved real estate. My wife always said he never saw a house he didn't want to buy. In fact, we talked about 1 or 2 today that I passed by that I thought, let's call on that one later. So we have real estate in 6 states, is it? And we run it all. That's what I do now. I run real estate, and it's income property from commercial to residential to vacation to a strip mall and so forth. Some of you might have washed your car at Freedom Car Wash. That was the car wash of the year on 3rd South and Freedom Boulevard. Front cover on the industry magazine. Same with the tanning salon I started, Seaside Tanning. Same with the laundry I started, Seaside Laundry. That was all because I had a strip mall and I had to put something on my land and in my strip mall. We still own all of that today. Obama put 10% on the tanning as a tax. That killed it. So if anyone wants a free tanning booth, tanning bed, see me. We can't sell them for a dime. We closed that one down. Seaside Laundry I sold. It's still there and doing well. Freedom Car Wash, maybe my manager's here. Are you here, Brett? He heard about our talk and said he wanted to come. But he does a good job running that. There's some storage units there and so forth. So that gives you a little bit of the story of what we built. Along the way, by the way, let me have this little postscript to the story of Rainy Day Foods and Nature's Way Products. Along the way, I was driving to Salt Lake one time and had this idea. There is a local company, I'm not going to mention the name, but everyone knows it. It's a multi-level, and they specialize in botanicals. Very respectable company. One of my nephews is one of their executives, by the way. But they were coveting our store sales. We were the big store sales. We had brands for all of the chiropractors and the drugstores, and we had brands for the grocery stores and the health food stores. They wanted that market, and I started thinking, MLM, boy, that is interesting. Anyone here involved in MLM, multi-level marketing? Ponzi schemes, anybody? But they aren't Ponzi schemes if they're done right. But this company wanted our market, and we wanted theirs, I decided. So I come up with a name. I decided to call it Natural Life, one word with a capital L. Natural Life. Thought that was pretty clever. We started out, we built it, selling the same products, different label, and the stores didn't like it. And for this other company, their distributors were going to bail if they did a store line with the same stuff at a different price and so forth, under a different label. So they bailed quicker than we did. The way I bailed, I had a fellow who was my director of new product development. He was a Chinese herbalist. I'm not sure if he was degreed or not, but he brought in some good products for us to sell. His name was Tai-Fu Chen, I can say it. And he decided to try and take this off our hands, and he bought Natural Life for a fixed sum, paid over 5 years, and we made his products until he got on his own and decided to make his own, mostly in the Orient. That company today is, I wish I had sold it on a percentage. This was my lesson. But I sold it for a fee, he paid it, and it was his. If you go online and look up Sunrider, it's about the size of Nu Skin today. If I'd sold it for 1%, I never would have had to work another day in my life. 1% of sales, pittance. He would have agreed to that in a minute rather than pay me the sum that he paid. But if you go online, it doesn't say anything. It was started by Tai-Fu Chen in Orem. But it was started by George Murdock and Ken Murdock as the name of Natural Life. And then he bought it as Natural Life and changed the name to Sunrider. And that's the story. And I can't blame him at all for wanting to put it the way he put it. But if the truth were to be told, Nature's Way started Sunrider. And we didn't really care for multi-level. And we've not been involved hardly at all, though we've been pitched 1,000 times to be involved in multi-level, but we haven't gone there. So that's a nice little side note. It's a claim to fame in a way, but I can't say that it lined my pockets in any appreciable way. There are a few things that I have headlined that I want to tell you about as my suggestions to you. And the first one starts with the word integrity. So my advice to you is, if you can't take anything else home today, write it big in the center of your page and put it on your mirror at home. There was a man captured in World War II as a prisoner of war who was told tomorrow he was going to be shot. He penned a letter to his wife, and then at the end of it he said, "Tell Robbie," I'm assuming his son, "the word is integrity." They didn't shoot him, and he lived, and he told the story. Integrity. Without integrity, what else is there? Integrity is the seed to all the other virtues. It's the foundation of all the virtues. Successful, good looking, good triathlete, all these other things they can say about you, but without integrity, those traits are worthless. One great man said, and I tried to find out who it was, I just found it in a book, and didn't give attribution. If integrity didn't exist, it should be invented. It's the best means of getting rich. Isn't that interesting? Have integrity, be honest and fair in your dealings, and you'll get rich. Maybe that's an answer for us. In Shakespeare's tragedy, Hamlet, Polonius says to Laertes, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night to the day, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man." Famous historian from Britain, Arnold Toynbee, "The great decisions are always moral. You cannot escape the moral choice. It lies in wait at the end of every path." And I'm going to turn the time over now for a minute to Mimi to tell you just a little down-to-earth story about integrity. So Mimi, come on up, please.
First of all, I want you to know we are honored to be here today. I looked in your eyes as many of you came in, perused your faces, and I sense a radiance and a brightness and a goodness that not all in your generation have, but you do. You seem to know who you are, you want to be the best that you can be, and you're on track to get there. We feel so confident and grateful that you are the ones who are going to be tomorrow's future leaders in your family, in your community, your nation, and the world. You have no idea what lies ahead for you. 40 years, full-time professional wife and mother. I didn't have anything to do with business while raising all those boys and one girl. I won't tell you about the time some of our boys decided to do a zip line from one of the tallest buildings at UVU to one of the other buildings. It wasn't called UVU then. So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just grateful there's a good security here that caught them before they killed themselves or hurt something. But I am going to tell you about an experience, a simple experience, that helps establish the importance of integrity. George told you he bought houses without my permission. That was before we became full partners. He doesn't do that anymore. And he better not ever go back to doing that anymore. He knows better. We are full partners. But he bought this house across the street, actually. A big house, guest house, 2 or 3 acres, and it had no grass, just dirt. An old abandoned swimming pool that wasn't finished in the front yard. It was a bank repo. Nobody wanted it. I mean, nobody. It was on the market for a long time. So he bought it, and we moved there with our big family, and who put in the sod? And I guess it was us, and a scout troop, I think, helped. And then who got to mow it? One time, I had to mow it alone with a push mower because all the boys and George were off on some kind of a trip. It was a huge job. But the boys normally did it, and they shared the responsibility. But by the time our youngest son was the only one home, he came to me and said, "Mom, you should have had more kids because I can't do this whole place by myself. So you really need to get another company, some landscaping company, because you need my expertise to help you with what you need most help with, which is the computer and everything technical, because you and Dad are from the 40s. So that's a dinosaur age, I guess, but he was right. So I got estimates and bids and chose this one young man to do the job. He said, I will come Friday morning at 10 o'clock, and Friday came and went. By night, I called on him on the phone and asked, did I misunderstand? You were going to come and do this landscaping job first thing this morning? He had some excuses and apologized, kind of not a big deal to him. Yeah, I'll get to it. And I asked him, do you want to know one of the most important secrets of success in business and in life? Yeah, I do. Well, this is it. The speed of trust. You do what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, and in the way you agree to do it. And if you can't, you communicate with the person to whom you made the agreement. And another thing, we don't do business with people we can't trust. So you decide. He changed his tone and said, thank you, Mimi. I will be at your place tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I will do the whole job in one day. And he did, until we sold the home. He still works for us and manages a commercial property, and we're dear friends. It's the speed of trust. It is so important to lay that on your foundation of integrity. It's a little thing, some people say, but it is big in the long run. And so every time you set your foot on the alumni center of this school, you will be at that place where the speed of trust made such a difference. We sold our home to UVU when you became a university. So it's yours now. I'm so grateful I'm not raking pine needles or picking up pine cones. And you don't have to do it either, because someone's taking very good care of that place. But we are entrusting to you, and we have faith in you that you will decide, if you have not already decided, to establish every decision on the basis of integrity. It will make the biggest difference in your business life and in your personal life than any other one character attribute. And now, on to some more wisdom by Papa G.
That's Mama Mimi. All the grandkids call her that. One of the grandkids told her dad, my oldest son, who would be here, but he's an international, or what do you call it, a helicopter pilot instructor and so forth, and he had students today. But he called Mimi the other day and said, Paige, the little girl, woke up one morning and said, I want to be like Mama Mimi when I grow up. Happy and full of energy. And what was the other thing she said?
Crazy.
Not crazy. Oh, and fun. Happy, excited, and fun. That's Mama Mimi. Well, Mimi mentioned the new UVU Alumni Center. That was our home for 20 years nearly. And there are two VPs that have their offices there. Archambault, his desk sits where our bed sat. Makes me a little nervous to think of that, but for 20 years. But his desk is right there where our bed was in the master bedroom. And who's the other VP that's got my study? Joel? Okay. Well, it's a beautiful home, and UVU has done it proud, and they have made some wonderful improvements. And we're hoping to be able to get enough family members to join me in paying for the naming rights and name it after my great-great-grandfather, Joseph Stacy Murdock, bodyguard of Joseph Smith, friend of Brigham Young, and the first Mormon bishop, presiding bishop actually, in Heber Valley. And there are monuments there to him because he settled the Black Hawk War, smoked the peace pipe in his upstairs bedroom with Chief Tabby. And that was the beginning of the Black Hawk War with the Indians in the 1860s, being settled throughout all the state of Utah and surrounding areas. Well, we've talked about integrity, and I have so many great quotes and ideas, and I think that Mimi summed it up. Living a life of integrity. I told you I was going to talk a bit about language. Does anyone know what ubiquitous means? Ubiquitous. Raise your hand if you know. I expected your hand to go up. The products of nature's way are ubiquitous. Ooh, doesn't sound like that's very good. How about this, out of the dictionary? The donkey, the ubiquitous donkey, is what allows Athens to keep track of this countryside. The ubiquitous donkey. Oh man, nature's way is ubiquitous, the donkey's ubiquitous. What does it mean? It's everywhere. So I have evidence here that there is at least one word, hopefully you'll take home today, that you didn't know before, and George told it to you. Are you aware that if you Google vocabulary and success in life, Google it, and what will come up is 1,000, maybe 100,000 different things proving that your status on the corporate ladder and your income in your bank account are determined by your vocabulary, being able to know the exact meanings of the most number of words. Is that amazing or what? I chose to study speech and English in a composite major at BYU. And little did I know until more recently that probably the reason for my so-called success, I know there are some much greater successes than I can say about myself, but is because I love to read, and when I read a hard book, I read it with a dictionary right handy. Of course, nowadays you just use Wikipedia on your cell phone and you're done. It's very fast. But to know the exact meaning of the most number of vocabulary words will determine your ladder. If you're going to be the executive, that means if you took a test, and there are studies, by the way, when you Google this, you'll see all these studies. The ones I have are from a book or a talk by Earl Nightingale, and he died in the 70s. So that has to be old stuff, but it's still true. Language. How many of you here speak another language besides English? How many speak 2 other languages besides English? Keep your hand up, Doc. How many speak 3 besides English? A few? Where did you go to school?
BYU, Thunderbird.
And Thunderbird. We have a son named Marriott Murdock, and I can't tell you all of the stuff I had told, but there is a reason his name is Marriott. The first reason is it starts with an M. Marshall, Mark, Morgan, Malin, Monroe, Marlon, Michael, Malin, McKay. All of our kids have M names. We like the double M. My first name is Mr., so Mr. Murdock. George doesn't work. But I loved Marriott, the Marriott story, and I read that book early on in my life, as I did Be My Guest by Conrad Hilton, all of Steve Covey's books, of course, but all of these great people, Ray Kroc about McDonald's beginnings, and so forth. The more you read, the more vocabulary you get. And if you're reading books and have hard words and you just pass it by, write it down, look it up, and then use it 2 or 3 times. It will be yours. Then when you take that imaginary test that they're talking about in all these studies, one done by Reader's Digest with 39 major companies, and their employees, they could see the test results and place their names where the ladder on the corporate ladder should be, and they were 100% right. And they didn't know the people, and they didn't know what their jobs were until after they'd had the test and put their names there. Is that amazing? CEO, top 1% or 1/10 of 1% in vocabulary knowledge. I bet if you run some rough words by this gentleman here, you're going to find he probably knows the answer. That's why he is where he is. And it's where you can be and why you can be there. Read. Learn greater vocabulary words. Have a program. Get a tape. Read a book. Do something to increase your vocabulary on a regular basis. And then plan. Goal setting. I could talk for a long time about goal setting. I had a little book, and I've never been able to find it, and it's not in publication anymore. It's called Count to 4. The 4 steps to goal planning, to having goals achieved. And I did it with my Rolex. I told you I'd tell you about my Rolex. I wore my Rolex every day once I got it for 20 years. I scuba dived with it. I swam with it, surfed. I ran with it. It's been in my safe for what, 20 years? It's probably worth $25,000, presidential. Why did I get it and how did I get it? I used the 4 steps in Count to 4. And you can do this, it can be to learn French. You learn French, right? But you went on a mission for Spanish. Go figure that, guys. Wanted another language. And so here I am calling you guys. That was part of my deal. If you call me a guy and you're my waiter or waitress, you don't get a tip or you get a slim tip. My wife is not a guy. But by the way, the English language has 600,000 words and growing. The average language of the industrialized and civilized nations of the world have about 200,000 on average words in their vocabulary. The language of the world of business is English. It is possible that Mandarin is more widely spoken, or Cantonese or the Chinese languages are more widely spoken than English. I don't know the facts on that. I tried to find it on Google, and there's a little bit of debate. But English is the language of business. Learn it, and learn it well. And if it's your second language, anyone here that has English as a second language? A foreign student maybe? Well, you would see that at Thunderbird. My son Marriott got into Thunderbird. He went on a mission to Brazil, so he spoke Portuguese. And he had English and Portuguese, and a little bit of Spanish, because that's a little bit easier to learn, I guess, if you know Portuguese. That's what I've heard. And he finds that in his study group of 8 or 10 people, male, female, from foreign countries, many of them, 5 languages was not uncommon. Am I right? You find that at Thunderbird. Marriott finished, got his MBA. He was absolutely flabbergasted. They accepted him to that school. It's quite a nice school. Another son, Monroe, by the way, was in your first graduating class here with his MBA. So we have some ties here. And Marriott's undergrad was here at UVU. So we are connected to this university. So the language, it's really critical. I'm going to finish in 3 minutes, I promise. Ubiquitous. It's through the ubiquitous donkey that Athens keeps track of the countryside. That's what they put in the dictionary to use it in a sentence for us. Nature's Way products are ubiquitous. I was in Smith's Food King in Las Vegas, where we live, the other day picking up some chapstick. And it just happens to be in the same department that has the health foods and the things for coughs and colds and remedies and so forth. And I started counting. Nature's Way, 1, 2, 3. When I got to 100, I stopped counting. That's my legacy, I guess. Almost every grocery store, every health food store, every kind of store that sells these kind of products in the free world carries Nature's Way. And quite a few of them carry Miller's Honey. There's some negative on the internet about Miller's Honey. We sold it to a company that had problems. I guess they gave us all their money and then they had a problem. They had to declare bankruptcy. But it's Chapter 11, so they're going to reorganize. But you need to know that because you'll find some negative stuff. You'll find negative stuff about Tai Fu Chen. He served some time. He had some problems with taxes. He learned his lessons. I still speak highly of him. He was a wonderful guy. He brought us some good products from China for Nature's Way and for Natural Life. I'm not speaking ill of anybody there, and I wish I could go see the beautiful Rolls Royce, a red Rolls Royce he bought for his wife, Arlene, or Oi Lin in Chinese pronunciation, that sits in the foyer of their building in Torrance or wherever it is in California. Wealthy guy, the size of about $1 billion in sales, pushing 500,000 in distributors throughout the world, China being the biggest, 7,000 dealers in China right now. So I'm going to talk for about 1 more minute, and it's going to be about legacy. And I'm going to do it by way of one of my favorite, because I just recently found it, one of my favorite poems. I was going to memorize it, but my skills are not great with that. Mimi would have had it memorized. She memorizes everything. Okay, Guterman, I think is how you pronounce it, is the man who wrote this poem. On the vanity of earthly greatness. You get the feeling he's going to poke fun because we're vain at legacy, about legacy. The tusks which clashed in mighty brawls of mastodons are billiard balls. Get the theme of this now? The sword of Charlemagne the Just is ferric oxide known as rust. The grizzly bear whose potent hug was feared by all is now a rug. Great Caesar's bust is on the shelf, and I don't feel so well myself. Isn't that beautiful? Legacy. What legacy are you going to leave, folks? Everyone leaves one. Don't leave a legacy of really good athlete, but no integrity. Questions?
I think we're out of time, but
Okay.
If you'd like to come up for a question or two, please give them a hand. And we have a token of our appreciation for you coming to speak here for each of you
Thank you. Okay.
for coming up.
Thank you so much.
much.